Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the CKC channel. I'm your host, Fire Master Kelvin Klaassen. And welcome to Reflections, another edition of Reflections. And I think we have a very, very nice show this evening with a special guest all the way from KZN with over 40 years of experience in chess. So I can hear myself somewhere, guys. There we go. So someone was still playing the channel there in the background, so that's sorted. Okay, so if you're new to the show, just remember to press the follow button. That enables the chat. If you can't manage to press the follow button for some reason, just go back to your home page and to the Twitch homepage, of course, and just sign up quickly. It's very quick and easy for free, nothing to it. Get back to the CKC channel and press the follow button, and that enables you to chat in the chat box. Come and ask these gentlemen of chess some questions, and that's about it. We've got some very interesting shows still coming up and so forth. And by the way, once you have followed the channel, then you can get notifications on when we go live for other events and so on. Reflections being one of many shows on this channel, but Reflections is also quite a nice show every Tuesday, 7 p.m. So good evening, Grey Old Wizard. Welcome to the show. Grey Old Wizard says, good evening, Kelvin, Dr. Bouah, and Mr. Rust. All right, so I think that's about it, guys. And just remember to leave your questions in the chat box. Mr. Rust will be showing us some nice games of his. So we're going to dedicate about half of the show to that. So don't forget to leave your questions in the chat box, because we will be starting with those questions around 25 past. So let's get those questions in early enough. So I think we can go over to Dr. Bouah, and he will do the proper introduction. So welcome, guys. Over to you, Dr. Bouah. Just hang on. Sorry, London, just hang on 1 second. You can start now again. My audio is off. There we go. Now you can go. Thanks.
Good evening, Kelvin, and good evening, viewers, and welcome again to the Tuesday edition of our Reflection Show. Tonight, my guest is Mr. Keith Rust, and Keith is all the way from KwaZulu-Natal. Keith has been one of the people that I got to meet on the chess circuit when I started to play many, many years ago. And Keith has always been a figure that I could go to when I need to know history of chess. I would often consult him when I'm unsure of something. And but through all the years, Keith has been part of the chess scene. Keith Rust, welcome to the Reflection Show.
Thanks, Lyndon.
Keith, you've sent me your biography, and thank you very much for that. And when I looked at it, I see that it's a very long biography, but a very entertaining one, because you've captured a lot of the essence of South African chess. Keith, and it seems you also started to play chess around 1973. Tell us a bit about how it got started in the early 70s.
No, actually, it was 71. And I just started high school. I got very bored at the time. It was winter holidays. And we had a set of board games which had drafts and chess in it. And I didn't know how to play chess. So I got out the encyclopedia and taught myself the moves. And of course, then I needed an opponent. I didn't have an opponent. So I taught my brother, my younger brother, to play as well. And we thought we were quite good until I got to school. And of course, we had a chess club at school, and I got scholars mated and all that sort of stuff. But it was very good, because the chess club was run by the woodwork teacher, Mr. Schumann, and he had a system, a ladder system. So you start at the bottom of rung of the ladder, and you can challenge a guy above you. If you beat him, you move up a rung and so on. And if you got to the top of the ladder, you got to go to the front of the classroom and you play Mr. Schumann. And he was a decent player. I mean, maybe 1400 or so. Took me about 2 years to get to the front of the class. And then 73, we got this letter at the school. It came from, I think, the Natals Chess Union, I think it was called at that time, something like that. And they said they're having a tournament in Escort. which is quite a long way from Durban, but it was in Escort. And so Mr. Schumann gave me this letter, said, you're our best player. Would you like to go? I said, yeah, of course. And so the next thing is my dad dropped me off at Durban Station and says, I'll see you in a few days' time. Just make sure I got on the right train, and then off I go to Escort. And that was my first ever chess tournament. And very different, because at school we never had chess clocks. I'd never seen a chess clock before. And the first night is like everybody does when you get to a chess tournament. You play some friendlies, you play some blitz. And I couldn't get used to the clock, and I was playing the French defense, and that kept on getting chopped up. So it was quite demoralizing that first evening. But then the next day, and they paired me against the number 2 seed, who was rated about 1800. And I had the black piece. I didn't know I was supposed to lose.
Oh.
I didn't know that. I mean, they just paired me. I was like, oh, fine. And so I played the Caracan, because I knew the French was terrible. And yeah, we got to the end game. I outplayed him in the end game. Then he got back and he got equal again. And then he blundered in this pawn end game. And I won my first game in a tournament against the number 2 seed. Just amazing.
Well, that is a good story. And Keith, from then onwards, you just started to play a bit more chess, because I noticed here from your CV that you bought your first chess book for 85 cents. Can you still recall what the name of that first chess book was?
Yeah. It was a book by Leonard Barden. It was called The Guardian Chess Book. I've still got it, actually.
Okay, well, Leonard Barden has written quite a lot of books in the last, and I know that him and Raymond Keane were among the more prolific English writers as well at that stage. Now, tell us about, after your high school, you now started to play the Natal Open and some of the other KZN tournaments. What was the chess scene like in KwaZulu-Natal in the mid to late 70s?
Yeah, it was different, because I got very lucky, because what happened was in 74, the day after my birthday, I'd been given 10 Rand or something, and it was burning a hole in my pocket. And so I went to the bookshop, a bookshop called Reigel's Bookshop in Pinetown, and they had a row of chess books there. And I'm browsing the books, and then the proprietor, Clive Gillett, comes to me and says, "So you're interested in the chess books?" I said, "Yes, very interested." He says, "Well, I play chess as well. Let's have a game." So I played him. And the next thing is I beat him in that game, and then he beat me in the return. And then I'm invited by him to come and join the chess club. And at that stage, 1974, when I joined, the club had something like 200 members.
200?
Yeah, 200. It was all this Bobby Fischer boom. And people don't believe me, because at the moment the chess club is back down to maybe 40 members or so. It's nothing. But back then there was 200 members, and 50 of them, I think, about 50 were 1600 or better rated. So I joined.
Decent players.
Yeah, decent players. I joined, I was maybe 1500 strength at that time when I joined. By the end of that first year, I was nearly 1700, because that's how you improve, is by playing guys just that little bit better than you.
Yeah.
And you play them, and you get better. Then you get to another section in the club, and then you play even better opponents. And yeah, it was very good.
Now, Keith, was it at that stage that you played Max Ewer in a simul? Did he come to Durban Chess Club?
No, he came to South Africa. It was that fact-finding tour of his, because they had this meeting in 74 at the Olympiad where they kicked South Africa out of FIDE. And so 73, it was towards the end of 73, he came to South Africa, and it was his fact-finding. And Durban was just one of the stops. And what happened was I wasn't supposed to play him, but Clive he paid, 2 Rand was a lot of money back then, and that was the fee to pay Max Erber, was 2 Rand. And I used to get 20 cents a week for pocket money. I couldn't afford to pay Max Erber. But I got there, and then the chairman said, "You're here, play him." I said, "I can't afford to play him." He said, "No, just take a seat, just play him." And so I took a seat, and I think Irva played, he played 32 players, and he was probably, what, 70 something?
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be 70 something. Very tall and very distinguished and very polite. And I remember about an hour into the game, I was sitting next to Rod Fry, and I said to him, how are you supposed to play against this guy? What do? Do you sacrifice something, try and make it interesting, or do you play it solid? And he says to me, no, mate. If you play tactics against this guy, he'll just kill you. So, okay, so I played solid. I played this Corocan, and it was solid. And we got to the end game, and it was about midnight, I think, because the game started at 8. About midnight, I was getting a bit tired, and the position looked like a dead draw to me. So I had no idea that you're not supposed to do what I did. And I offered Dr. Irva a draw. And he just laughed at me. He said, young man, I don't see this thing so quickly. You sure it's a draw? Let's play a few more moves. So we played a few moves, and it was a draw anyway. But yeah, he was very, very kind. Yeah.
Well, it was a nice memory to have played against a world champion and a man of that stature. I mean, he was the FIDE president and world champion after having beaten Alekinde in 35. So certainly a great story there on that side. Now, Keith, tell us a bit about the Natal Opens and those ones. Who were the top players that you played against at that time when you started playing competitive chess?
Yeah, well, the first Open I played, I think, was 74. But I mean, I was very weak. And I played almost all of them after that. And the strongest ones were in the 80s, I think, because what they did was they got sponsorship from a crowd called Swimline.
Yeah.
And Swimline was basically John Puttergill. He was a very successful businessman. And he actually listed his company on the stock exchange for a small fortune. And what he did was he donated a huge amount to the yacht club, which was his main interest, and a slightly smaller sum to the chess club. And the money lasted, I don't know, 20, 30 years or something. It was quite nice. And so from then on, the KZN Open had basically the biggest prize fund in South Africa.
Yeah.
Well, apart maybe from the Twins, because the Twins came along a few years later and they got sponsorship from the Kroc family. But
right.
At the early 80s, the KZN Open had the biggest prize fund. And we got all these guys from Joburg and Cape Town coming along, and they were strong. And I think I made a note in 82. I think that was the strongest ever. And there was 180 players. I think 180, yeah. It was the biggest entry we'd ever had, was about 180. And we had 10 guys. 10, yeah, 10 over 2,200. It was enormously strong. And
yeah.
I finished in 10th place, and I was the only guy that was rated below 2,100. And
so a strong tournament for at that stage, nearly like a SA closed.
It was. And I mean, your top seed at that point, it's one of my memories that I'm really angry about still to this day. The top seed was McFarlane. He was still at school. And it was the year before he won the SA Close, but he was already rated 2290. And I played him in rounds, and I got this completely winning position. I'm the exchange up, and I should have returned the exchange for a pawn, but I didn't. I made a mistake. But then we got into this end game with bishops and 5 pawns against bishop and 5 pawns. But I had the outside pass pawn on the A file, and it's dark squared bishops. So the bishop's controlling the queening square. And everybody except me saw bishop to B2, and then the pawn can just go down the board and promote and win his bishop. And so everybody except me saw that. And then
oh no.
And I played some other line, and it didn't work. And McFarlane's down to like 1 or 2 minutes for 20 moves, and he beat me in this bishop ending. And I was so annoyed with myself because I had the guy, and then
yeah.
But didn't you see this? I said, if I'd seen it, I'd have played it, you know.
Yeah, but Keith, we all have those stories. I can tell you, I can assure you that we've had Kenny Solomon against the ropes, you'd had Daniel Babish against the ropes, and these guys escaped because of their resilience. But Keith, in '77, you won the Natal Open ahead of Walker and others. Was that one of your first highlights in your career?
Oh yeah, actually that was only the second Swiss tournament I ever won. I hadn't won anything before that year. I think I won the first Swiss at the Durban Chess Club in '77. That was my first Swiss that I'd ever won. And then the Natal Open was the one after that. And it's the only one that I've ever won outright, 6.5 out of 7. And we had the top-rated guy was David Friedgood, who was, I think, a 4 times SA champion, was it?
Yes, Friedgood.
I think he was a 4 times champion. And we had David Walker, who just won the SA Close that year. He was the number 2 seed. And the game I wanted to show was the game from round 6 where I beat Walker. And yeah, the last round then I played Tor Ganholm, who's famous, or I think famous is perhaps the right word, for his Stonewall system. And after I played Walker, he said to me, "Yeah, you're going to play Tor next, and he's going to play a Stonewall, and you're going to beat him." He was very encouraging. I mean, despite the fact he just lost to me, I greatly David Walker as a player and as a Durban champion, and he just encouraged me. He said, "Yeah, you can beat Tor. You've got the right style to beat him," and that's what happened. I won that last game, 6.5 out of 7, and yeah, my best score ever in a Natal Open, that's for sure.
It's a fantastic, and I mean to come ahead of that guys who were real champions of South Africa at that stage as well. And in '78, you played in the SA Open and you only lost to the foreign masters. Who were those foreign masters that came through?
I might have lost another one, which I think I lost 3 actually. But it was another foolish incident. I played Pritchett, I think, in round 5, Craig Pritchett, international master.
The Scottish IM.
Yeah, and he just written a book on the Sicilian Scheveningen.
Yes.
So you probably got it. I had it at the time, but I hadn't read it properly.
So you decided to play it, okay?
I played the Scheveningen against Pritchett, and I went wrong in about move 10 or something, and I played E5 instead of casting, and Pritchett looked at the board and he looked at me, and you could see there's something wrong with the thing, but he couldn't work out what it was. He couldn't remember his analysis. And think about move 16. There was one move he had to find, and he sat there at the board for like half an hour, and he found the move, knight to D5, and it just completely refuted the entire variation. And it was in his book. I found it afterwards. It was all in his book. Knight D5, white has a winning advantage. And a couple of moves after that, he sacrifices a rook, and I get chopped up and died.
Yeah. No, but it's, I suppose that shows one shouldn't play the lines against the author of the book as well.
Yes. But then the other guy was very interesting because he didn't really speak much English, was Sanguinetti.
The Argentinian.
Yeah. At the time, I think he was an IM, but they made him a GM, an honorary GM after that. And the opening went all right for me, and I had an okay position, and then it just went downhill from there. And afterwards, he was telling me, this moved better, that moved better, and I couldn't understand why. It's like a different level of understanding, isn't it, between an player and a top grandmaster. And I wrote down on the back of my score sheet, the moves he said. I still don't understand the game entirely. He just outplayed me. But the funny thing is that he played Donald McFarlane in round 1, I think it was, or round 2. It was one of the early rounds anyway. And McFarlane drew with him. And was it that year? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was just unreal. Yeah, McFarlane was very good. He really was.
So you've played quite a number of those guys, and Keith, coming now, you at some stage in those late 70s, you became a 2000 rated player, and you stayed at that level for over 30 years. How did you maintain your mastery level of over 2000 for such a long period of time?
No, well, the problem is getting there to start with, and that's where everybody has a difficulty, because 2000 is a serious rating barrier, and I got stuck in the 1600 to 2000 range for years. And then eventually I sat down and said, okay, you've got to do something about this. And I got all my games up to that point. It was about 200. And I went through every game and I analyzed them. And then I did statistics on them. And I said, okay, what openings work? What openings don't work? Do I have a weakness somewhere? And I found a weakness in the end games. And I did a lot of work. And for example, I found that playing against the King's Indian, I had a terrible record with the classical variation and the fianchetto, but the Samish worked for me. So I switched to the Samish variation, and I've got a very good score with the Samish. And the other thing, as I say, I noticed I had a weakness in my in-game technique, and I got out Ruben Fine's basic chess innings. I went through it. It took me, I don't know, 2 months. And then all of a sudden, that was the end of 76, early 77, then all of a sudden I just went from 1850 to 2000 within 2 years. And yeah, but I think you've got to get your understanding of your openings right, and then you've got to get your in-game technique.
And of course, your self-analysis that you've subjected yourself to as well with that scrutiny. Yes. A very important point. I mean, both Botvinnik, Dovetsky, all of them make the point about self-analysis, won games or lost games as well. Keith, in the 80s, you had an opportunity to play in the SA Closed. Maybe can you tell us a bit about how it came about that you competed in the SA Closed, and who was your competitors?
Oh yes, yeah, it was unfortunate that I only was able to get leave because I work as an accountant and auditor, and so July was always very busy for us because we had all these junior end audits. So I only got to leave the 1 year, which was in 87, and it was in Pretoria that we played this thing. Freezing cold it was. And Quinteros was there, and De Villiers, we had Dan Wolf, I think, and then the two Marks, Mark Brubery, Mark Levitt. I think they were the top seeds, and they actually finished in the top 5 at the end of the day. And Charles actually could have tied first with Quinteros, but what happened is we all got a very nasty flu. And the first week, I was sick as a dog, and I recovered, I think, on the Monday or something. And Charles was going to play the local guy from Pretoria, what's his name? Friek Mens, that's right. And Mens was sick the day where they were supposed to play. And Charles didn't claim the point, which he could have done. He said to Mens, no, we'll play it privately. You know, you feel better, we'll play it. And then when they played, that game ended in a draw. And that was the difference between Charles winning the thing with Quinteros and finishing half a point behind. So it's very sporting play by Charles, but he was in a class of his own compared to the rest of South Africans. He was just mowing everybody down.
Yeah, 6 SA Closed titles.
And the guy that I played in the last round and beat, he was very annoyed with me, was Clyde Walpe, because he was the defending champion, of course, back then.
Yeah.
He was so unpredictable. He was the only guy in the whole of South Africa that actually, I think, beat Quinteros in a regular game. It was just, he could beat anybody, but he could lose to anybody because he lost to me.
No, but I played Clyde Walpe once. I lost to him in '93. It was I think that probably one of the last games, competitive games that he played, because he played here in Cape Town, but I didn't see him on the chess circuit after that. Now, one of the things, Keith, that I've always respected you on is that you have this ability to follow chess tournaments and to follow games. What is the interest that you have to sort of follow all of these games and make sure that the correct games have been captured and recorded for history? what interest do you have in that, and how did it come about?
Yeah, I think it's one of those obsessive things, isn't it? It's collecting and capturing properly and all that sort of stuff. But it's always annoyed me when people don't capture things properly at a national championship level. And I feel that should at least be captured properly. The junior events doesn't matter so much, but your national championships, I feel, should be it's an important event. You should have a proper record.
Yeah,
but
no, I agree with you. And
on these things a lot of time. And the one guy who took a lot of time out of my life was John Blackburn, the late John Blackburn, who was, I think he was a 7 times Durban champion. Very, very good player, well over 2000. And his when he passed away, I got this little suitcase full of these scraps of paper, and he'd written on all kinds of pieces of paper. Like nothing went to waste with this guy, and he wrote in pencil in descriptive notation. And there must have been close to 1,000 games. I mean, it took me a year to transcribe that lot. Yeah. That was a.
And how long did it take you?
About a year, I think, off and on.
Huh. Okay, that must be a monumental piece of work as well. Keith, just before we go over to Kelvin, when did you stop playing competitively, in your view? Because I know you were still playing some tournaments in 2015 and so forth, but when would you consider sort of that was your last time that you trained for tournaments and the rest of it? What would you consider as your last tournaments?
No, I always train for the club championships because that's a round robin. You know who you're going to play in advance, so you can prepare for that sort of thing. The Swiss ones, I mean, you can't really prepare. So, but the last long tournament that I played, I think it was 2014 or 15 or something, was a KZN Open. That was the last Open Swiss I played. And then I found that you get old and you can't sit and concentrate for 3-4 hours at a time. And it's okay once a week to do that, but to do that 7 rounds in a row, it's so
yeah.
I stopped playing, the weekend Swiss type things probably 3-4 years before I retired. And then I got to the stage in 2018. I mean, I turned 60 and I won the club championships, which for I think the 25th time. And I said, well, do I really need to play any more? And I've proved my point.
Yeah, you've shown 25 times the Durban champion. And of course, Durban Chess Club is one of the oldest chess clubs in the country. Keith, is it 1893 that was established? I can't recall.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, no, because I always sort of, in my mind, have Cape Town 1885 and Joburg and Pretoria 1889 and 1890 because of the gold rush, and then Durban in 93. So quite a distinguished record as well. Keith, just let us bring Kelvin on board. Kelvin, do we have any questions in the chat room?
Yes, I've got one question here. Let me just find it over here. All right, so yeah, guys, just if you have any questions, just leave them in the chat box. We are a bit quiet this evening. I've got one question here from Meg. Thanks for the question. Meg is saying, good evening, everyone. Keith, what is one of your fondest chess memories? So it's a bit of a broad question, but thanks, Meg. What's one of your fondest chess memories?
I would have to say one of the earliest memories was that draw against Dr. Irva, and I had my picture taken and by the newspaper photographer, and it was in the newspaper the next day. And then everybody at school saw the newspaper, and they were saying to me, "We didn't know you were so good," and all that. And then that photo stayed on my wall for years, I can tell you. That's a very fond memory.
Okay, fantastic. And I think I must also ask a question here, since everybody is quiet. I've also got a question that I think is also a popular one. From my side, I'd like to know, who is your favorite or most influential world champion on your own chess style or career? Who's your favorite world champion?
Yeah, probably either Capablanca or or Botvinnik, because one of my early books was a book of Capablanca's Best Games by Golombek,
Okay.
and that had a strong influence. But then I think Botvinnik more so, because he talked about how you have to analyze your own games, and he also explained his plans, and yeah, his style was also more like mine, I think, because who can play like Capablanca anyway? It looks easy, but you try and do it,
Yes.
not so easy to do. Whereas Botvinnik was very logical, and I'm a sort of logical person as well, and his games had a big influence, I think.
Okay, fantastic. Just on that note, actually, the one time at the tournament, someone told me he likes the way I play. I play like Capablanca. I almost fell off my chair because, like you said, I don't. Who can play like Capablanca? So yeah. And then we've got one more question here. Let's see, maybe another one. There's a couple flooding in. Like I said, the viewers like to do these things last minute. So yes, first of all, a statement from Sean. Sean says, Keith, I never had the privilege to meet you. Which Sean is this? Is this perhaps Sean Wallenberg? Can you just maybe just post in the chat? Okay, so this is Sean. Sean says, Keith, I never had the privilege to meet you. Well done on your fantastic SHS history. Lovely to hear your story. And then I think Sean has a question here later on. Sean says, what is your take on online chess? So what's your take on online chess?
Yeah, I think it's good. I don't know that you learn too much from it though, because I see a lot of these games. I don't know if you analysed any of the games from that SA Online Olympiad, but some of those games are actually shockingly bad. And the endgame technique, was appalling, some of it. But then you look at the time on the clock and you say, well, okay, I understand it. But
yes.
But those sort of games, they're not good for understanding endgames at all. And to me, it seems to be a lost art almost, that people don't know how to play endgames anymore because they don't really get to practice an endgame under a long time control.
Yes.
And if you go back to the 70s and 80s, we adjourned games. Sometimes we adjourned them twice, and I had probably some games go to 10, 12 hours long if you took all 3 sessions. And it's a skill that you learn, how to analyze an endgame or how to analyze a position. And you play these fast time controls and you don't really learn how to analyze properly. Your reactions are beautiful, your tactics are beautiful, but the planning of these games, not so good. So I think once you get to a certain level where you understand chess, then yes, you can go and you can play these really fast games. And I remember it was in 1989, I think, and I was in England. I was visiting there, and I went to watch some of this. It was the candidate semi-finals, and in between, I took a trip out to one of the schools where they're holding a blitz tournament. And I was playing blitz with the top guys in England, and I was second, I think, or so in my qualifying group, and then I got into the final group, the 5-minute group, and I'm playing blitz against the likes of Michael Adams.
Sure.
And he chopped me in about 20 moves with a line against the perk. I wish I could just remember it. And then his mate was Mark Hebden. And in between the rounds of 5-minute games, these guys were playing 1-minute chess with a mechanical clock. And the quality of their chess was just unbelievable. Unbelievable chess they were playing. At 1 minute with a mechanical clock. I mean, it's just amazing how skilled these guys are.
Okay, yeah, fantastic. So there you have it, folks. You need to work on all aspects, and maybe online chess doesn't do everything for you. Maybe it's good for certain aspects of your game. Yeah, I think I've got one more question here. Thanks to Sean, by the way, for that question. And then we've got Monster Frick with quite a bit of notes here. Let's see what Monster Frick says. Monster Frick says, Mr. Rust, with reference to my utmost respect for you and your positive contribution to chess in South Africa, I would like to know from you if all of this fulfilled your inner satisfaction of your personal contribution to chess in general, and if it did, I would like to know what would be key to do for someone to feel the same after reaching someone your age. I hope you got everything over there. It's quite a mouthful.
It's quite a difficult question, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, look, I've always been a player for 40 odd years. I was just a player, and then I realized that if I'm going to carry on in the game, then I need to find something else to do as well. And that's when I decided I'd try becoming an arbiter. And that was, I think, 2010. I became a national arbiter. And then I also passed the FIDE arbiter's exam. It was that same year. And since then, I've been doing 10, 15 tournaments. I think I've done more tournaments than any other arbiter in the country, actually. And it's just one of those things I've enjoyed doing. But with coronavirus, who knows, because I'm supposed to be isolating all that stuff. But yeah, I think if you're really into chess, if you love the game, then there's always something to keep you interested. And one of the things that fascinated me the most has been this online chess with Magnus Carlsen.
Yes.
And I don't know if you guys have been watching his Banter Blitz shows.
Yes.
And I can sit and I can watch that for hours.
Yeah, that's quite fun.
It's just absolutely amazing what this guy sees. And he's explaining, while he's still got 30 seconds on the clock, he's explaining how he's going to win the game. And sure.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fun.
Yeah, so there's always something that's interesting.
Okay, thank you very much, Keith. And yeah, once again, just thank you to Boom Shaka Shaka for following. Welcome to the show. Okay, I've got one last question also here from Monster Frick, and then we can go over to you, Lyndon, and probably the game.
The games, yeah.
So Monster Frick again says here, Mr. Rust, would you consider yourself a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to capturing significant moments in chess, making sure no history goes forgotten, and it be there for future young enthusiasts?
Oh, yeah. He's probably referring to that game that he didn't capture correctly with between Watu and Barish. It's still not. Yeah. No, I'm a perfectionist when it comes to game capturing, yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, so thanks to Monster Frick and everybody else for your questions. Yeah, over to you, Lyndon. So are we going to the chessboard?
Thanks, Calvin. Yes, Keith has prepared a few positions and a game that he'd like to show us tonight, and that's part of the show because that's part of the memories. Keith, tell us a bit about the background to the game.
We're going to look at the Walker game first.
Yep, that's fine. Calvin will put on the Walker game first.
All right, let's switch over to the chessboard. Yeah, so we're at the chessboard. Yeah, we've got Walker with the black pieces, correct? And Keith, you're playing with the white pieces.
I switched to... let me just switch to the game. Are you moving the pieces?
No, I'm not moving the pieces.
Okay. Right, well, this was at the KZN Open in 1977, which was my big breakthrough. And
okay.
Walker was the defending South African champion at the time. And if I move the pieces, will that show on your board?
Yes, we are seeing at C4, E5, knight C3, and so forth. Right.
So this is now this is a very well-known gambit nowadays. It's called the Bellon Gambit, but it wasn't well known to me at the time.
Okay, can I just add to that? That looks extremely exotic to me. It's not so familiar to me. Looks I like.
It was very popular at the time, and David had played it, I think, in the SA Championships in one game.
Okay.
So it wasn't totally unexpected, but I mean, I hadn't analysed it, and there was an article in Chess Magazine which said you must just take these pawns. So
Okay.
that's what I did. Was I took the pawns. And you'll see that after he plays d5, and here's the interesting part.
With what to
So
block?
what would you play here?
Okay, so your natural instinct is probably bishop d7. And knight bd7 just seems like... I'm not sure actually. I would instinctively say bishop d7. Is there something wrong with bishop d7? I've got a feeling you're gonna tell me there's something wrong.
Yeah, well, it turns out that the book move is king to f8.
Oh, wow.
And
okay. French-like move.
You need the light squared bishop to, well, attack on the light squares, I suppose,
okay.
later on. But anyway, so we swap it off.
Very interesting.
I win this. At this point, the computer says I missed something, but anyway. And so this is a position where I thought I was doing quite well, because obviously he can't give me a check, because his rook is on pre and the pawn e4 would be on pre.
Yes.
So he basically has to castle. And now I've got 2 pawns against the SA champion.
Whew.
So I was quite happy. But the thing is, if you look at this position, I can't actually move anything on the queen side.
Yes. So how?
You see one is dead wood. So anyway, so we play a few more moves. And this is all pretty much best play anyway. And with the time control, so it's 60 moves in 2.5 hours.
Yes.
And I used 50 minutes and Walker had already used 123 minutes. So he's now got less than half an hour for 40 moves.
Okay.
Sure.
He's running quite short of time. And at that, that stage of my life, I was writing down the move times, I think every 10 moves, I think. Maybe every 5. I changed my mind every couple of years, and eventually I said I'd write down the move times every 3, because I had a very bad experience where I lost on time in good position. So I said I must monitor my time.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this habit of writing down the times. And so you can see he's got this huge amount of pressure. And now this is the critical point in the game. And what used to happen was we had a guy you probably remember called Kurt Dreyer.
Kurt Dreyer.
He was SA champion, I think, twice only.
Okay.
And he also used to write a newspaper column for the Star. And every week he had a newspaper column. And he also had a column in the SA Chess Player magazine. So what he did was he came down to Durban the week after this game was played, and he said, "Okay, Keith, you've won the championships. Let's go through some of your games." I said, "Yeah, fine." So I sit opposite Kurt Dreyer, who's an SA legend, and we get a crowd around the board, and we start looking at this game. And this position, I said to Mr. Dreyer, I said, this is where I think David went wrong. And so we analyzed this position for, 20 minutes or something. And the question is, what would you play here? And
so
it's not easy, because originally I thought queen to a4 was a strong move, but then I don't know if we can show this variation. Okay, let's just try queen to a4, pawn here, rook takes, and then queen here, and then everything just falls apart. So that was an idea that I discussed with Kurt Dreyer. But then what we did was we finally decided that actually queen to a4 wasn't so good.
Okay.
And in group analysis, we came up with this move, bishop to e7. So not that move, bishop to e7.
Bishop
and
to
then the
e7.
point is that you can play bishop to f6.
Okay.
And
b4, of course, not possible now because you just take on b4 again.
you can mistake it. And once the bishop gets to f6, it can start munching on those pawns on the queen side as well.
Yes.
So that would have given him a huge amount of compensation. But apparently the computer says it's still equal. Quite surprising to me that it's still equal. It says, I think pawn to f5, then rook to f4 is equal, but
Yes, but the more difficult to play probably for white, yeah. Practical chances are good, yeah, for black. Okay, that's a nice maneuver.
Yeah, so at that point, he took the pawn, and I can now force an endgame at this point.
Releases a bit of tension at least.
Yes, and then there's a pin on the diagonal. And at this point, you can choose either a rook ending or a queen ending. And he chose to go for the rook ending. I think the queen ending would have been probably losing.
Okay.
So rook here, rook takes, and then if you do rook takes d2, then you get to this queen ending. So rook takes, rook pins, takes, and it looks very much close to losing for him. I can put my queen on d4.
Yes.
And it's bad. So he goes into the rook ending, and this should be a drawn endgame. And yeah, this is where he starts. Okay, he could play at this point. He could play instead of the king move. He should actually attack the rook, rook to d3, and attacking the pawn from the side. And a few moves later, that also works. But he moved his king across to stop the pawn. And then at this point, I came up with the move of pawn to g4. So if I do nothing in this position, he's going to play pawn to f5, he's going to consolidate.
Yes.
So I have to play pawn to g4 here. And then the idea is that I'm going to trade my b pawn for the e pawn.
Yes, and then you got that majority going.
Yeah. And he was very short of time. I don't have a time noted at that point, but he must have been down to probably about 10 minutes or less at that time. Yeah, definitely less than 10 minutes, I would say. And he played the wrong square for the rook, so he played rook to e2. Whereas if he played rook to e3, then I don't see how it's winnable.
Check and then goes back, yeah.
Go back again, you know.
Can you maybe go f5 and king f4? Doesn't it help?
Yeah, I don't think it really helps.
It doesn't help.
Still a draw.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
he played rook to e, which was surprising because he's SA champion. So now I can protect it from the side, and then he tries and goes back again. But now I've got the tempo. He wins this one, and the next few moves pretty much forced. And then he comes up with this nice little trick, king to d5. And the point of that is that he can play, if I play
king e4, king e4, and king f3.
King,
oof.
And he's got a draw. He's check until...
Nice.
So that was his trick. And then, because I hadn't done enough thinking about endgames, I thought, well, I can just swap this into a pawn endgame and I'll win the pawn endgame. And I wasn't sure the rook ending was winning, but I mean, with hindsight, I mean, it's so obvious. Rook to e7, it's got to be winning.
Just cutting off the king, yes.
Yeah.
Then you're going to go h4, h5, king f1 eventually.
And then pawn to g5, you get a pass pawn. It's got to be winning. But,
yes.
But I saw this little combination, and I still had half an hour on the clock, and I saw this pawn ending, and I thought, oh, I'm winning this. But it turned out not to be so simple as I thought. So he takes, check, and like this. This is all forced. And now I went wrong. And I only found out 25 years after this game, when I had a computer analyzing this thing, that I'd actually gone wrong at this point. Nobody had even, not even Kurt Dreyer, when we were having an analysis, he just sort of saw the end game and said, oh, okay, yeah, this is winning. But actually it wasn't. And what I should have played in this position was not king to f3, but king to h4.
Okay.
And then you go back. I must go forward, goes back. And now I have to play pawn to h3. And there's a very nice trap in this position. So if I played h4,
king f6,
king here, pawn to here, and there's a mate. So
Oh.
it's possible for one to actually lose this.
Beautiful, beautiful trap.
Yeah. But pawn to h3 is obviously winning because you gain the tempo.
Yes.
You can.
Yeah.
So straightforward win. But now this position is actually after king to f3. This position turns out is actually a draw.
Oof. Okay.
And it took a computer to point this out to me. So to draw this, you have to play pawn to h5. And it's based on the fact that if you've got two rook's pawns, you can't win.
Yes.
Takes.
So one has to be careful even in the endgame, Keith.
Exactly. And now pawn to g6, you can take the pawn, you're 2 pawns ahead, but you can't win this.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
But I mean, I missed it, and Walker missed it, and Dreyer missed it. So it's easy for a computer. But then, of course, after king f6, I just play king here, and then it's easy peasy. This is just straightforward England technique. Nothing much to see after that.
Okay, quite an interesting one over there.
A nice win there for your kids. But I mean, interesting opening. I don't think I've ever seen that opening, Calvin.
Yeah, no, like I said, I haven't seen it, but I think it's because we don't play so much English openings. But yeah, I think you did excellent to withstand that pressure. I don't think that was easy to play from the beginning.
I had a lot of games in this variation with another guy from the chess club, Gerald Bull, who was I think he was also about 7 times Urban champion. And I think he got interested in this after seeing David Walker playing it.
Okay.
And we had another 3 or 4 games in this time, but I always played D3 after that.
Yeah. Keith, you've got some puzzles that you want to show, that you're going to show the viewers?
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we didn't say about me playing email chess.
Yes, tell us a bit about that.
Okay, so I played email chess from basically the end of 95 through until about 2003 or so. And then I realized that computers are getting too good and everybody's using computers to help themselves. So I said, all right, well, that's time to stop that. But I got up to a rating, I think, of about 2,300. And I played for 2 organizations. I played for the IECG, Internet Email Chess Group, and also played for the ICCF, the Correspondence Chess Federation. And the first match I played, I think I won. I played an early match against a computer. It was called Computer 5. And what you did was you sent your move by email, and the next day you got the computer's move back again. And I won my game with white against this computer. I still don't know which computer it was, but that was in 96. Of course, nowadays, forget it. You wouldn't be able to do that. But this was a game played in the ICCF. It was their Jubilee. They had a Jubilee tournament, and it was open to everybody, whether you're a member of ICCF or not. And so I entered, and I did quite well in the preliminary rounds, and I got knocked out in the next, I think, the quarterfinal rounds. This guy, Piccoli, he was the top-rated player. He was from, I think, from Brazil. And about a year or 2 after this, his rating was in, I don't know, 2,600 and something. So he was actually a very strong player. And I didn't really have an ICCF rating at that time. Should have been about 2,300, but I hadn't played enough games to have a rating. So maybe he didn't respect me enough. He maybe underestimated me. And this is quite an interesting opening. As I said, I had some success with the same-ish. And we played this line all the way up to move 16, is basically following a game by O'Kelly. And you can see it's quite savage. I mean, the king are both under severe attack.
Yeah.
And I played my new move, which was pawn to g4 in this position. And this guy used to take his time over moving. And then all of a sudden, he played his next move immediately and said, oh, I'm taking a month's leave, which you can do in ICCF rules. So you're allowed 4 days a move on average. And this game must have taken close to a year to finish. But in this position, he plays knight to f8. So he's protecting the h7 square. And the next moves are fairly straightforward. Takes, clear the center. Knight to g3, bishop here. And then this is thematic. Knight to f5 is thematic in these positions.
Nice.
Because you're trying to open up the line. He has to take it. Obviously, you can't take it with the pawn because the knight is on f6.
Yeah.
So he takes with the bishop. I take with the e-pawn. And at this point, I think he should have played the rook to d8. And instead he played the rook to e7. And I said to myself, that doesn't look right. And then I had one of these huge things because, you're working as well during the time the tournament is on. So you don't get much time to analyze during the evenings. And then I think I took 8 days over this next move. So I was trying to calculate all the sacrifices and stuff. And the first move is probably straightforward because if you look at the position, I can't move the knight on c3 because, well, let's just go back and move. I can't play pawn to g5, knight to d5, knight takes d5, and I've got a rook on b2 on 3.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of variations involved there. And then I've got to be careful about back row mates and also mates on b2. So I said, all right, well, let me solve the back row problem and the rook on pre problem first. So I push the pawn to a3.
Okay,
and
nice.
Then, and then I put this thing into Stockfish the other day when I was going to discuss this with you guys. And I found that it sees everything. You get it to depth 36. I mean, that would have taken my computer a month to do.
Yes.
Back in 2001 or whenever I played it.
And what does Stockfish think of that, Keith? What does he think of a3?
No, it says it's good, but
Okay.
you've got to go to depth 36.
Okay.
And then queen b3 is basically forced. But now if you look, the queen and the king are on the same diagonal. So I've got a tactic on the diagonal.
Ah, okay.
So he's seen this, I think. So he plays queen there, rook to d7. Obviously, I can't take it, I get mated. Push the pawn to g5, threatening the check. And he's got his defense, which looks very strong. So if I move the queen, then he's going to move his knight to d5, and my queen side starts crumbling. But I'd seen all of that, and I said, all right, what can I do in this position? And this is the key move in this whole game is pawn takes
f6.
on f6.
Oof.
Yeah. And what I have to understand was that after rook takes forced.
Yes, okay.
Corner. And now this position. And excuse me. The key in this position is that I've got a bishop on c4 controlling g8 and a pawn on f6. So all I have to do is double rooks on the h file and I'm baited him basically.
Cool, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So although he's materially ahead, he's actually losing this position.
So he needs to still move the queen and then we can basically just double up.
So he moves the queen. Okay, it's maybe not quite that simple because he's got a check on
G1. Yeah.
And then he plays his rook here. And now I need to move another piece because remember the old story about when you're attacking, you needed 3 pieces to checkmate.
Yes. Yeah.
So I have to move the knight across into the board. And now I'm heading for g5 and then f7 possibly, or g5 and attacking h7. And so I tried to block it. And you see here. And now I just double up. And now he's threatened with the mate because the bishop and the knight and the pawn, they're all working together.
Beautiful.
And after rook here, knight takes, king takes. I just have to find one more accurate move. And he can't stop the checkmate.
Oh, wow.
A lovely queen sacrifice here, Calvin.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think this is my best ever email game. I have to say this is my best email game.
Yeah, it's a bit of tactics in there, but it's almost looks like a position. Okay, there's definitely some tactical stuff, but it's also a slight positional queen sack.
Yeah, but I mean, the whole point of the queen sacrifice was
It's the
attack,
mating patterns, yeah.
the mating attack.
Yeah, that's beautiful stuff.
Because if I didn't play the queen sacrifice, there were other ways around it, you know. So if you go back, I could actually move the queen back to e3, you see. But that didn't actually, I didn't even analyze that because at the time I was intent on checkmating him, but the computers actually see the queen to e3 is actually quite a strong move. And the point is you can play queen to c5 and bishop takes c4.
Okay.
I mean, that's your creative side, Keith, coming to the fore.
And also, I mean, you've got so much time to analyze these email games. So, yeah, you can go into great depth of analysis.
Okay, yeah, that's a fantastic game.
I've certainly enjoyed that one. Keith, you still have one more puzzle that you're going to show us?
Oh, yes, the game against de Villiers.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a very bad week for me at the start of the tournament because I had de Villiers and I had Quinteros after him. And this game against de Villiers actually went quite well. And we got to this position over here. This is a standard Benoni type position. And I played that. Well, let's just go back and move here. So this is a standard sacrifice, the pawn sacrifice, pawn to e5.
e5, yes, and then f5.
And then you takes, and you've opened up the lines.
Okay.
So it's a standard sacrifice, but you shouldn't take it. You should probably just do knight to d7 or something.
Looks a bit scary, though. Looks a bit scary to do so. e6 coming, perhaps. So.
Yeah, maybe. But he shouldn't have taken it. And after this, he gets into a lot of trouble. Now, I win the exchange. And this is the point where I sat and I thought for 20 minutes. And I couldn't see the win. I was convinced I was winning, but I just couldn't see it. I don't know, it happens to everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I'd calculated this variation with rook takes e6.
Yes.
And pawn takes and knight here, rook here, takes, and takes, rook here, takes, check, king moves,
yes, king e8, yeah.
This
doesn't seem convincing, yeah.
How can you win this? But then sometime later when I had a computer and I checked it and I found, okay, you can play this, but you don't have to play knight takes f6. You can actually just play the knight to c5, threatening to take this check. And it's completely winning. So de Villiers got away, but I didn't realize this. And so, I played de Villiers first, and then I played Quinteros, and he smashed me, something shocking. So after my game against him, I said, and we'd analyzed the game together, and I said, well, can I show you my game against de Villiers? Of course, he said yes, because he's keen to see how to play against de Villiers.
Yes.
So I showed this position here with the bishop on e6, and I show him this variation I calculated with rook takes e6. And
yes.
Obviously doesn't work. How he could say obviously doesn't work after like a few seconds.
Yes.
But I mean, grandmaster. So then all he does is he picks up the rook. You showed another variation. Okay, so he picks up the rook, and this is the position here.
Yeah.
He picks up the rook on e7, and he says, okay, rook b7, it's winning. And it's like after 30 seconds or something. And then he puts it back again. He says, oh, okay, also rook to a7 must be winning.
Okay.
I still don't quite see it, but it's like a different level of positional understanding that these guys have got. And the idea after rook b7 is that you're controlling that passed pawn. And basically black doesn't have anything really useful to do. So he was convinced it was winning. So very interesting. So yeah, if De Villiers had been playing Quinteros from this position, he would have played probably rook to b7 and yeah.
Yeah, no, it's quite a nice example, Keith. I like it because you were discussing now. You were saying these tactical sequences, and that's what happens to us so many times, where you feel like there has to be something immediate, and then these top players just find something subtle and slow to play. It's almost like just the temperament to know when to play fast and slow. It's like when I play, I like to make this example as well. When I play a guy like Watu, I've had it so many times where he's attacking me. We've got this thing going on where he attacks and I try to refute him. And but every time I might get this move in there, I feel like, okay, I've just stopped everything. And then he just comes up with a slow building up move, and I'm like, okay, I thought I'm out of the woods, but the slow move is actually putting me under pressure out of nowhere. And this is quite beautiful to see. Rook b7, just a positional type of bind with so many pieces on the board. It's nice to see that positional understanding there from Quinteros. So wow, this is a nice example actually.
It's very strong actually. I think he was at one stage close to 2600. He was a very strong grandmaster. And of course, he got into a lot of trouble from playing in South Africa at that time.
No, you got into quite a spot of bother there, banned for 3 years and by FIDE. But Keith, from my side, I mean, I've enjoyed chatting with you and just re-energized again with you, showing us the examples. And it just goes to show, Calvin and viewers, that South Africa does have a rich chess history. And players like Keith contributed tremendously to that. And Keith, from my side, thank you very much for keeping our history alive, making sure that the games are correctly captured, and of course that that history that you have of all these players, especially from KZN and South Africa, that is important because we can only but build on what we had previously. So from my side, Keith, I've enjoyed chatting with you, and I'm sure this won't be the last time that we see you as well. So from my side, thank you very much, and I'm going to hand you back over to Calvin to do some closing remarks. So Keith, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Lyndon.
All right, thanks, Lyndon. And there are a couple of questions flooding in as per usual here on the channel. I think I have to have a separate Zoom session with all my viewers to discuss the timing of the questions. But if you guys will bear with me, I've got a couple here flooding in and a couple of statements here as well. So I've got a question here from Milky Shake Shake. Milky Shake Shake says, hi Calvin, Dr. Bouah and Mr. Keith Rust. Turning in a bit late. So Milky Shake joined us a bit late, but welcome anyway. Question for Keith. What advice would you give to the younger generation in order to improve their chess? So for the youngsters, what to do?
Yeah, I think you've got to get your basics right. So books like Chernev, the most instructive games ever played, or Logical Chess Move by Move, those ones are very good for the youngsters. And then also you've got to do the tactical puzzles, and that should get you to 1600 probably at least. Then after that, well, yeah, that's a different story, but you have to get a grounding in strategy, and you have to get your tactics working at some point.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. And next one is from Boom Shaka Shaka. Boom Shaka just followed us today, so welcome as well. Question for Keith: What to you is some of the greatest benefits of chess?
Well, I'd say it's very fun. It's a very fun game. It's the best game I've come across. So I've just always enjoyed it. And of course, you get these educational guys who say, yes, it helps you with your thinking, that your math skills become better, your logical skills become better.
All right.
Lots of benefit.
Okay, thank you. And then I've got one more question and a couple of statements here. So from King Ulster says, thanks, Keith. Interesting nuances and novelties in the positions. And then King Ulster's question is, do you still prefer pen to paper for recording and analysis? as opposed to software?
Well, you're not allowed to use software to record games. FIDE laws don't let you do that. So you have to use pen and paper. But I mean, obviously, once you've got the record at home, you record on the computer. I mean, I've been doing that since 1989, I think it was. And back then I had a trip to England, and I went to see a guy called Malcolm Payne, who's been to South Africa a few times actually. And he had a business called CB Software.
Yes.
Which was, they were the licensed agents for ChessBase. And so, yeah, so I went to see him at his flat in London, and he showed me this new product, ChessBase, which I've been using ever since then. And you know, as a serious professional player or even a serious amateur, you have to have that.
Yes.
And he showed me this product. It was on what we would call a 720K stiffy disk.
Okay.
That was the entire program, and it had a database of 1,000 games with it, 1,000 historical master games or something.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, then he showed me this, and he said, "Well, how are you going to pay for it?" And I said, "Well, I've got traveller's checks." He said, "No, it's not just in traveller's checks. He wants cash." So we go out to the back of his flat, and he's got this old skadonk of a car. He drives me to the nearest bank, and I cash a few checks in, and I give him the cash, and he gives me the ChessBase. And so that's how I started with ChessBase. And okay, nowadays you can get a lot of other software. You can get, for example, ChessX, which is a free download, and you can get it. It comes with Stockfish built in. So all those sort of things you have to use if you're going to analyze your games properly. You have to have something on your computer. You have to have the software, and it's a lot easier to analyze now than it used to be. And my first computer I was using ChessBase on was a DOS machine. It had a stiffy drive, and it had 10 megabytes hard drive on it. It was state of the art back in the 1980s.
Okay, cool.
Things have changed a lot.
Yes, indeed. Wow. Okay, cool. And then I think there's one or two statements that I want to read, but I just want to get us back into the library, guys, for the final few moments. Just get myself back on here as well. Okay. So final few statements. There's Istvan as well. Istvan is also a regular on my channel. Welcome, Istvan. Istvan says, many thanks, Keith. I remember you from the Durban Chess Club. So Istvan says he remembers you from the Durban Chess Club.
Steve Ginge.
Say again?
Steve Ginge.
Who? I'm not sure now. I think so.
Istvan plays for Cape Town Chess Club.
Yes.
Yeah, in Cape Town.
Oh yeah, we always used to call him Steve because nobody could pronounce his other name.
Okay. all right. And then King also says, thanks. Okay, no, that's already read. Boom Shaka says, thanks, gents. Always a great show. Monster Frick says, thank you, Mr. Rust, for your time and sharing a special part of your life with us. And also for Calvin and London, who entertained us with another special guest in our chess community. And Istvan just confirms there, yes. So yeah, thanks everybody for your questions and everything. From my side, thank you so much, Mr. Keith Rust, for entertaining us with all your knowledge and experiences for the evening. And I must say, I quite enjoyed your positions over there, the game as well. So I think I need to catch up on your chess a bit more as well. I think I'm going to go through the databases and check out more of your games.
Download a whole lot from my website.
Which website is this? Can you give the name?
durbanchessclub.co.za, and then there's a page called Downloads. There's about 6,000 games on there.
Okay, lovely. All right. And remember, guys, we also got a few hints. Check out Capablanca and Botvinnik's games as well. So you've got some homework to do, guys. And so once again, just thanks a lot, Keith, for joining us. It's been a lovely show. London, so who do we have next week? Can you tell us?
Yep. So next week we have the three-time Olympiad player and current SA over 50 champion Maxwell Solomon from Cape Town, and we will be going through Maxwell's chess career with him and his views on chess, Calvin.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to that one. And yeah, guys, it's just I think all of these shows are just getting better and better. And once again, I feel blessed to have all of us, you, London, for hosting it, and thanks again to Keith. So everybody, thanks for following. And if you haven't pressed the follow button yet, make sure you press it and stay up to date, and enable yourself to chat in the chat box. So yeah, thanks, and yeah, any final words from you guys before we sign off?
Keith, any final words?
Well, I mean, I could talk for another hour. I mean, if you wanted. It's been fun. Thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you very much, Keith and Calvin, and some interesting chess there. And Calvin, again, you know, we've got a rich history in chess in South Africa, and Keith has been part of that journey with us as well. So we look forward to more of Keith, and of course, more reflections next Tuesday at 7 o'clock.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your evening.
Right.
See you next time.
Thanks, Keith.
Cheers,
See you
cheers.
later. See you, Calvin.
Cheers. Bye.
Right. Bye.